Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast, Tuesday, March 19th, 12:00 p.m. Bo Wulf, Zach Berman back to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. We heard from Kenny Pickett and DeVante Parker yesterday. DeVante Parker heard the booing from the crowd coming from Zach Berman. This afternoon, we're going to hear from Devin White and Oren Burks, the Eagles' two new linebackers. Zach, how you doing?
Doing well. Excited for the show.
Lovely. Way to take that and run.
Yeah.
What's going on? You had a chance to go to the Sixers game last night. How'd that go?
Great game. Big Sixers win. My son loved it. Shout out to Vince. His tickets were awesome.
Did you spoil Reed? That was the deal. That is the deal you have to make. Vince says you can take him to the game, but you got to spoil that boy.
He got to stay up late. He got to see a great Sixers win. He got ice cream. It was a great night.
I mean, really only one of those things feels like something was coming out of your pocket there.
And he got to hear me talk about Kyle Lowry at Cardinal Doherty and how much fun it is to watch Kyle Lowry play, and all these years of watching Kyle from the Catholic League to Villanova to the Grizzlies to the Rockets to the Raptors to the Heat, now the Sixers. So, yeah, we had a great time.
It feels like you didn't follow through on the spoiling part.
Isn't seeing a Sixers Heat game?
But that's not the deal. That wasn't the deal that you were supposed to have made with Vince.
Yeah, he had dinner and ice cream. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he had a nice time.
You talk about Kyle Lowry's prodigious badonkadonk?
I talked about the way Kyle Lowry plays the game and how
the
that's
Debo Samuel of the NBA.
That's something that can be emulated. There's people in the chat talking about your shirt.
Oh. Well, this is, I can see the confusion. Okay. This looks a lot like the shirt I wore yesterday. Yesterday's shirt was, I had made a mistake. That was the yellow gold version. This is the orange version.
Still looks gold to me. I mean, that's not Flyers orange. That's not Syracuse orange. That's not burnt orange. That is.
Well, you don't see. There's nothing yellow behind to compare it to.
No, I saw in our comments section, because I read all the YouTube comments, people were saying it reminds them of mustard.
Yeah. See, I don't think that it's mustard.
Okay.
It's like, how could you? Listen, there are different tints of the color on the shirt. Do you think that this looks yellow to you? You think that looks yellow?
It looks gold.
No,
yes,
that's
gold.
an orange.
But yeah, speaking about, well, it's not gold. I was trying to make a transition to Hassan Reddick.
Okay. Speaking
about gold, speaking about treasure, fortune. According to ESPN, Hassan Reddick had a roster bonus that was due March 15th, and it got pushed back to April 1st.
Now, why do you think they would do this? I think there are two potential reasons.
Yeah, I think this is to buy time to facilitate a move. That would be my read on it, and I've been on the record.
Because this is something that Hassan Reddick's camp would have to agree to.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So, presumably, this is giving the team more time to find a partner. That's why Reddick would accept the movement.
Exactly, and Hassan more time to kind of find a deal elsewhere, right? But I've been on the record saying I think Hassan Reddick's the best player on the defense. I think the Eagles are a better team with Hassan Reddick. I expected the Eagles to move him when they brought in Bryce Huff, and especially when they renegotiated Josh Sweat. I think they're a better team with Hassan Reddick than without him, and so I would want to keep him, but I think the way this is heading is for Hassan Reddick to go elsewhere next season.
I think the other possibility here is a setup for maybe one of the funniest April Fool's jokes possible. I mean, it's an April 1st roster bonus. Hey Hassan, you got traded. You're going to the Niners, and he's getting ready to get all celebrating, and then, sorry, just kidding. April Fools, you're back with us.
You strike me as an April Fool's guy.
I mean, I would like to be an April Fool's guy. I'd like to be able to hit a good April Fool's joke, yeah.
Okay.
It's not like a thing that I do every year, but I mean, certainly this year, Casey's in a good sweet spot. Had him rolling on the floor at dinner last night laughing, so he's going to be in a good position to make some jokes.
He laughs at your jokes?
He does sometimes, yeah.
So he's the one. Anyways, in other news, you didn't like that one, huh? In other news, Ian Rappaport.
No, well, hold on. Let's stick.
Okay.
The Reddick thing is a big deal, I
Yeah,
think.
okay.
Because it does tell you that they are, both sides here are efforting to make a trade. What are you laughing at now?
I'm not laughing at anything. I'm having fun.
That poop-eating grin on your face.
There's no sell. You didn't sell that.
Well, you didn't sell mine, so why would I sell yours? Is there a chance that this goes the way of Darius Slay and Josh Sweat and other players they've done this with in the past, where Hassan Reddick finds out that his market is not what he hopes that it is, and he is willing to come back to the Eagles, and they're willing to have him back? Where are you turkey-wise on Hassan Reddick being an Eagle next year?
30 back with the Eagles, 70 elsewhere. I'm trying to kind of divorce what I would do from what I think they're going to do. And I still think Hassan Reddick plays elsewhere next season. I would have a hard time seeing a scenario where Bryce Huff is making more on a per-year basis, not looking at cap hit, but like on a per-year basis or in guaranteed money, is making more than Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat. They got that resolution with Josh Sweat last week. It allows Josh Sweat to... I can't imagine Josh Sweat would agree to that and then be essentially the third defensive end here, right? Or the third edge rusher, rather, right? So my guess is Josh Sweat is expecting to play quite a bit.
But he's already signed. It doesn't matter what he wants at this point.
So I got to think this is all kind of part of the Eagles' plan. By pushing this back, it's trying to find that resolution. But to your point, if Hassan doesn't find the numbers that he wants elsewhere or the contract that he wants elsewhere, I suppose there's a possibility. You never say never. We've seen that. We've seen C.J. Gardner-Johnson call Philly fans obnoxious and then sign the next year and say, it was a compliment. I'm obnoxious too, right? But I think that, again, maybe I value Hassan Reddick more than the rest of the league does. That's probably the case. But I still see a scenario where Hassan Reddick gets the contract he wants elsewhere and the Eagles trade him.
Well, it's also interesting that the date is still before the draft. It's still April 1st. So it's not like they can wait and see how the draft plays out for some pass rush needy teams. Like, they still have to get something done soon.
Yeah, and I would also keep saying this is a bad edge rusher draft relative to other years. And, like, for instance, we don't need to look at 2025. There's some prospects in 2025 that are at the top of the draft. There might not be an edge rusher taken this year until 8, and there might only be 3 in the first round. When typically, or no, probably 4 in the first round. Let's say when you have Dallas Turner, you have Jared Verse, you have Latu, and you have Chop Robinson. But you see years when there's 6 or 7, right? And multiple guys in the top 10 or multiple guys in the top 15. If you're a team that needs an edge rusher, Hassan Reddick's an attractive option this year relative to the draft.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think higher of Hassan Reddick than the league seems to, but I also still think that there is a market for him to some degree, and it's about getting like what's a reasonable expectation for what's coming back, you think?
A third
at this point.
A third and a fifth.
A third and a fifth.
I mean, maybe
that
a second.
Doesn't seem worth it to me.
I would try to get a second next year. I would focus on my 2025 picks right now.
Yeah.
And I would try to get a second next year and a fourth this year.
Yeah, I think I would do that.
Yeah. I mean, if you can get a second next year and a third this year, that'd be ideal, right? You don't have a third rounder. But I would try to get into the second round next season.
Okay. All right. What was the next thing you were going to talk about?
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to this. Ian Rappaport from NFL Network had a tweet out this morning. Just learned that Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts read about the passing of this football player from a rival high school and decided to pay for his funeral expenses. So it's a horrible story out of Houston. A football player from North Shore High School, which is the rival of Channelview, he was killed, and he was shot, and Jalen Hurts pays for the funeral of the player. He had a 4.1 GPA. The young man who passed away, he'd been accepted into 15 colleges, according to this story in Houston. And yeah, he was found dead from a gunshot wound Saturday night. So horrible tragedy, unspeakable in that regard. But Jalen Hurts, impressive gesture on his part.
Well, he has also done a lot of work to try to
exactly.
raise awareness against, about gun control and stuff like that. So that's a good, kudos to him.
Absolutely.
Okay. What did you think of the players we heard from at the Novacare Complex yesterday, Zach?
Yeah, Kenny Pickett. So just to be transparent with the audience, we said we were hustling over.
I can see right through you.
We were hustling over to the Pickett press conference. Kenny, a man after my heart, was early, right? Wasn't late. And he was operating on Coughlin time.
How many times in your decade covering the team has there been a press conference that started early?
One. Yesterday when we were hustling over. No, it's been like maybe 2 or 3 times. Usually you're there waiting. And then we were waiting for DeVante Parker. But yeah, Kenny Pickett was there early. So
we know how you felt about that.
We were not there for Kenny, but listened back to it. Hit all the right notes, like Andrew, our producer today. Loved the shout-outs to Kenny Pickett's favorite Eagles teams growing up, his favorite players, Donovan McNabb, and Brian Westbrook and Brian Dawkins and Brent Selleck and Jeremiah Trotter. He was kind of giving a shout-out to those teams there. And
he said Javon Curse, too. I think we all were thinking the same thing when he said Javon Curse.
What were we thinking?
I think you know the answer to that. Don't play dumb.
Well, the last premier edge rusher the Eagles signed, right?
Wow. After all this gassing up on Hassan Reddick, you're throwing him under the bus.
Good point. No, in terms of paying top of the market. I think that's part of the problem with Reddick. But no, that is a good point. So I imagine you're referring to his drink of choice.
Oh, well, now you have to be the one to fill in the audience.
Well, you can, if you're a loyal listener, Bo's pineapple juice story from last week that I left the room, so I was not associated with that story, but I did watch it back. But I certainly heard you share that story, a story I've heard before in different variations. So in any event, Kenny Pickett talked about his favorite players with the Eagles. It's a full circle moment for him. Like he said, he grew up going to Eagles games with his father, with his grandfather, ever since he was 5 years old. He's only an hour and 15 minutes away now from Ocean Township. Drives faster than I do, apparently. But for the real football stuff, he says that he's comfortable with how he conducted himself in Pittsburgh. The way it's been reported is not consistent with his version of events. He said they were kind of all on the same page with that game when he reportedly did not want to dress as the emergency quarterback, with kind of the way it worked with Russell Wilson and competing for the spot there. He said those were behind closed doors, and he's comfortable with the way he comported himself. He views this as a reset in his career, an opportunity. He knows the Eagles had interest in him coming out of the draft. Howie Roseman told him that it was that Thursday night game against North Carolina was the first college football game Howie had went to in a few years. He referenced that he's been in communication with Jalen Hurts. And he's excited to be part of the room with Jalen and Tanner McKee. He kind of understands what his role is. It's a crazy league. So that's what Kenny Pickett said.
Anybody ask him about his favorite item of food at Gianni's?
No one asked him about that. Unfortunately, I was on 95, getting off.
Going 95, I'm imagining.
No, but I was pushing the pedal a little harder than usual, and I was getting off that, the stadium exit, and I was pulling up the Patterson Avenue when I heard John from the Eagles PR staff say 2 more questions, and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna miss this one. Took the L, and was not too pleased.
You had a job to do. You were doing your job.
Yeah, but being there is a big part of this, right? And you always want Kenny Pickett to know when he walks into that auditorium and he looks to that seat.
That is the weird guy who went to my hometown.
That is the weird guy who went to my hometown.
By
the way, there might be like a there might be a secret society in the Eagles building of like guys who say that's the weird guy who went to my hometown, referring to me. Yes.
Who do you think Kenny Pickett thinks is weirder? You, who went to his hometown and ordered his chicken vodka wrap, or me, who went up to him at the Senior Bowl and accosted him and said, "Michael Dunn says hello"?
Probably me, because he's probably had a lot of awkward interactions before, but there's probably not a lot of people who go to his hometown, go to a restaurant, and say, "What does Kenny Pickett order here?"
Kenny Pickett's first day in the Eagles locker room. He's just tidying up his locker. He turns around, and the two of us are sitting there like, "Hey, Kenny, remember us? It's your two guys."
I take umbrage to your impersonation of me. You always make me sound like a creepy 75-year-old, right? And your
"Hey, Kenny, I know Michael Dunn, and I had your chicken vodka."
Yeah. So I certainly
It's really delicious, that chicken vodka wrap.
Well, it is. I mean, shout out to Gianni's, giving them free pub here because they deserve it, and they were nice people in that restaurant there. Also, while we're on that subject, I need to clarify. I said Lyndhurst last week. I meant Oakhurst. So my fault there.
Wow.
And
This is worse than the Sidney Ponzone fiasco.
No, and I so appreciate, one of the cool things about this job is our loyal listeners, and they can reach out directly to us. So I heard from a native of Ocean Township on Friday night and had some great things to say about Kenny and the show. So I responded to your first DM. I'll respond to your next one later. Now it's in my mind.
Slide into the DMs. I like that.
Yeah, you can always message me on whether it's Twitter, Instagram. I keep my mailbox open, so anyone can reach out. Please.
How about email?
Yeah, email Zach@allphly.com. A little behind right now. I'm gonna get back to everyone who wrote. I'm a little behind right now. I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah. But anyways, and then DeVante Parker. Didn't really learn much from DeVante.
Yeah, I felt like it was not the
fan of a few words.
most loquacious
Yeah.
press conference of all time. But in his defense, it was a little bit awkward for him to be up there while you were sitting in the front row just giving him double birds.
We never do that. Although, did you see Kyle Lowry last night? Give the middle finger under his shirt.
I did see that.
Yeah, that's Philly tough right there.
Oh, that's really tough.
Yeah. So I would say that DeVante Parker. This is an opportunity for him as to kind of win contested catches, help out however the Eagles need. That's kind of why he signed. He didn't have much to say there, but I look forward to getting to know DeVante over the course of the next few months.
I thought you asked the best question of the press conference, which was 10 years in, what have you learned? How do you approach the game differently? And he gave you nothing. Take care of the body is all he said.
It means I did not answer. I did not ask the question well, right? I think sometimes there's a misconception among reporters that, if you ask this really pointed question, it's a good question. If a question doesn't get a good response, it's not a good question. The whole purpose.
The purpose is not to impress the other reporters. It's
exactly.
to get a good answer.
Exactly. The purpose is to get a good answer. And so I think sometimes I'm using is it the royal we? Am I using royal correctly there? The royal we, like a collection of reporters. I think sometimes we, and I'm included here, you try to, especially now that everything's televised, you don't want to sound like dumb when you ask a question. And you try to frame a question a certain way. But if a question does not get a good response, it's not a good question.
Yeah, maybe if you had prefaced it with, "Hey, DeVante, as someone who hates you and doesn't want you to be here."
I don't hate anybody. But
you don't hate anybody?
Hate's a really strong word. I don't hate anybody. I don't hate anybody. I mean,
you don't hate anybody.
There's people I strongly dislike.
Even throughout history.
I mean, we're not going to go down this rabbit hole. People who I've interacted with. Okay, does that work? You can find redeeming qualities to most people. So,
I mean, I definitely hate a lot of people.
You're on the record with that. So, anyways.
You don't hate anyone?
All right, hate. I mean, yeah. There's. All right, you're gonna set me up with something like you're gonna pick a murderer or someone. Yeah, but all right. Okay, there's people that I hate.
Okay,
Can we move on to the next
That's
subject
all I need to know.
Okay.
Just admit that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
DeVante Parker included. All right.
DeVante Parker not included.
Before we move on, it's time for me to tell you about our friends at Empire Today. Because with Empire Today, you get the best convenience. And you know what that is? That is shop-at-home convenience. The right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a price match guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring. So because they're the best, they've got copycats. It's like, you bring to the league this great offense that's taken the league by storm. It's a copycat league. You know what else is a copycat league? The flooring business. But those copycats, they can't beat Empire Today when it comes to quality, service, and speed. So what they're going to do is they're going to try to lowball you. They're going to advertise low-quality products that Empire Today, they wouldn't give those products to their worst enemy, to their DeVante Parkers. Empire Today won't promise you the lowest prices because anyone who does that is putting flooring in your home that they wouldn't put in theirs. So here's the deal with Empire Today. They keep shopping for floors simple with a curated product selection. Their philosophy is to help you find what you need, not to overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutes. What they leave out of their selection is as important as what they put in. Empire's product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each year to find the perfect styles. They service their own warranties, and if an issue does arise, just call Empire because they service all warranties themselves. You won't have to track down a manufacturer's phone number or anything like that. So, schedule a free in-home estimate today with Empire Today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code PHLY. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/PHLY for details.
I love this time of year. March Madness is something that I look forward to all year long, and ever since I was a kid. And I remember there were years when on the Eagles beat, it was after free agency, before the owners' meetings, and I would take the afternoon off. I'm admitting that now. I'll take the afternoon off. I go to the local bar. I sit down and I watch all the games. And when I was there, I would I would treat myself to a beer. Ooh. And I would have a nice ice cold Miller Lite. Because you can hang out with your buddies, you can hang out with the people at the bar, and you're all friends when you're drinking Miller Lite. A lot has changed over the years. One thing that hasn't is the great taste of Miller Lite. It was the original light beer, and to this day, it's still the best one. Miller Lite has more of the taste you want and less of the stuff you don't. There are times in life, like March Madness, when what matters most is being with your friends, drinking a Miller Lite. You can make conversation about the game. Is the 10 seed going to beat the 7? Is the 12 going to beat the 5? And you bond over the Miller Lite and the college basketball. It's the great taste that I like. It's the fact that it's less filling. It has that clean finish, and it has simple ingredients because Miller Lite keeps it simple. It's undebatable quality with great taste, only 96 calories. It's the best. It's the beer that strips away everything you don't need and holds on to what matters most. A light beer that tastes like beer, less filling, and only 96 calories. The original light beer since 1975. Times change, but you can always enjoy the great taste of Miller Lite. Tastes like Miller Lite. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/PHLY Birds, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories per 12 ounces.
Got any fun tournament takes yet? I know your boys are playing tonight.
The who's?
Yeah.
Yeah, I respect the program Tony Bennett's built. No, this is
like we should do a fun some kind of tournament thing.
Yeah.
I feel like bracket's too easy.
Yeah, this is such a Bo Wulf take, by the way. It's like
a one-on-one bracket is like it's not that fun.
People love filling out NCAA tournament brackets. You will decide to make the free agent talk a bracket, but then when you actually get to the NCAA tournament, let's not do the bracket.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You got me pegged.
Yeah. So what I'll say this here: don't sleep on Kentucky. Okay.
Ooh, this is the blue blood.
And I understand everyone who watches college hoops is going to say, ZB, what about this defense, man? This defense is bad. And they'll point to
Kentucky's on my radar too, to be honest.
They'll point to Ken Palm's defensive efficiency ratings and where the champions typically are over the past decade and a half and where Kentucky is. But I got to tell you,
You got the athletes to turn it on if they need to.
And the way this team scores, and with the way Reed Shepard has come on, and then you have Dillingham, you have Reeves. I mean, we're not even getting. There's a piece on allphly.com right now. Ed Barkowitz has all the local connections. You got DJ Wagner, you got Aaron Bradshaw, you got Justin Edwards, right? Like, Kentucky's just loaded, and they're big game tested. They have this like really high ceiling, and if you told me Kentucky loses to Oakland in the first round, I'd be like, all right, I wouldn't put it past them. If you told me Kentucky beats UConn in the national championship, I would say, okay, I wouldn't put it past them. They're that loaded. So I love this Kentucky team.
Yeah, sounds like a Kentucky team. I kind of like them too.
Great
we'll
minds.
We'll figure out what our competition's going to be. All right, let's move on because we are now in the second week of free agency. The Eagles have made the majority or like the bulk of their big name additions, but there are still a few holes in the roster that we think they might want to address ahead of the draft. So let's do a little back and forth, a little bargain shopping, some guys that are on our radar as we proceed here. You want to go first?
I'll let you go first. I enjoyed this exercise. Admittedly, I was doing a lot of work on this, and I thought it'd be a cool piece for allphly.com. I can go first if you want, but yeah, I'll let you go first.
I wanted to mostly stay away from guys that we have talked about already a lot, but I do think we talked about this guy briefly. He was at the back end of my top 100, and we saw Jack Driscoll sign with Miami yesterday. They've lost Sua Opeta. Obviously, Jason Kelsey has retired. There's a little bit of a hole for depth on the offensive line right now. You signed Matt Hennessy. Between Matt Hennessy, what looked like the projected 5 starters, Fred Johnson, that's like 7 guys who would dress on game day. You need at least one more. I expect them to draft 1, probably 2 offensive linemen in the draft. But thinking about like a high upside shot, a guy who has a name that might be attractive to Howie Roseman, and if anybody is going to get the tools out of this guy's body, it's going to be Jeff Stoutland. I would be interested in a Mekhi Becton signing.
I like that. You and I are. Oh, no, he's not on my list, but I was compelled to do that.
Yeah, and now this is a guy who has really struggled.
Yep.
Struggled to stay healthy. Struggled to keep weight off, but he has lined up at both right tackle and left tackle. So there's extremely theoretical versatility. I think that would be an interesting camp body shot to take for the Eagles. Maybe it's $1.5 million and it's incentives up to 4 or something like that.
Yeah, I am with you there because offensive line tools in the body matter, right? There's a position later where I'm going against kind of the athletic profile that I typically seek, but offensive line, I think when you have that type of size and you have that type of upside, that a change of scenery can extract the talent from the player. So I am with you there. He's still so young. He's 24 years old? Is that what you said? And I believe that the 24 number jumps to mind. He's had a hard time with the Jets. They moved him around.
Turns 25 in a month.
So 24 right now. I would take a swing there, and he was an option for me. But I really like that.
Yeah, I imagine we're going to have a lot of overlap in the guys we looked at. But
yeah, so well then let's stay on the offensive line in the offensive line category here because I did consider Becton. What I was looking for though was someone with a little more outside-inside versatility. So someone who's tackle, but you can also move him in the guard. This is someone who has starting experience, but he's also young. He's an upside guy. I think he's 26 now, turning 27. And that's Josh Jones.
I had Josh Jones on my list as well.
Okay, yeah. Josh Jones was with the Texans, originally drafted by the Cardinals. I'm going to give you snaps by position. This is according to Pro Football Focus. This is not their grades. This is their charting of where you're playing here. 761 career snaps at left tackle, 612 career snaps at right guard, 256 career snaps at right tackle, 63 career snaps at left guard, meaning that he's played 4 of these 5 spots in games in his NFL career. That's appealing to me. Number 2, the Eagles studied him coming out. This was the COVID year, okay? So this isn't like, you didn't have your top 30 visits like you typically do, but if you go back and you kind of search the archives, Josh Jones had a video conference with the Eagles. Now, whether that is indicative of interest or whether that's just kind of cross-checking, you don't know. 2020 is a hard year to track in that regard, but he is someone who was on their radar, slipped a little farther in the draft and initially expected. But he still has a high ceiling. He's still young, and the versatility makes him appealing. The Eagles have Fred Johnson as a backup kind of left tackle for them. I expect them to draft a tackle in the draft. I think it's going to be their first-round pick. But the thing I like about Josh Jones is he can play multiple spots along the line. He's still young enough to be developed, and he gives you legitimate starting experience.
I like Josh Jones. I think he's a better player. I think he's a better fit. The only reason I chose Becton over him was because I imagine he's going to have a stronger market. Like he has a better history of tape and that versatility. I think there's maybe a little bit more league-wide interest in him, but I think that would be an ideal fit for the Eagles. And there was some Eagles connection. I'm trying to think back because I remember talking to him at the Senior Bowl. There was like some specific Eagles connection that he has, and I can't really remember what it is right now.
Blocked for Greg Ward, perhaps?
It's bothering me. Yeah, it might be a Greg Ward thing.
I think he originally committed to Oklahoma State out of high school, and then he transferred to Houston. Played in Tom Herman's.
Been like he was training with Lane Johnson or something like that. But yeah, anyway.
So Lane's got sway. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next up for me, this is a player we have not talked about, and this is we think about the kind of guys the Eagles like. They like big names. There's your Mekhi Becton. They also like bringing guys back. And what I want here is another option at nickel. Right? They don't really have a guy. C.J. Gardner-Johnson can move there. Isaiah Rodgers, in theory, can play there, but that's not what he did in Indianapolis. I think they need an option here, and this is a player who is not quite of the caliber of Avonte Maddox when Maddox is healthy, but he has stayed healthy his entire career. The Eagles originally signed him as an undrafted free agent, released him, went elsewhere, played in Green Bay and Minnesota and Pittsburgh last year, and that is Chandon Sullivan, who is 28 years old. We're talking about a low-level signing here, but a guy who you can pencil in and gives you like a Bradley Roby level of play, but is younger and a little bit more durable. So I'm going Chandon Sullivan for a cheap little deal.
I like that. I was considering him too. He's been productive. He's probably one of those the Eagles wished they did not let him get away. But
they had a lot of guys in that year. It was like Chandon Sullivan, Ryan Neal, and Jeremy Reeves all went on to be productive NFL players.
Yeah, good job by their scouting staff there.
Yeah.
And what certainly makes sense, and Howie Roseman's on
And you know what? That was the year. Like, that was the year when we were whining about them prioritizing keeping the old guys. Like, that was the Casey Toohill, Vinny Curry decision. Like, they had a lot of opportunities like this where they could have kept guys around with a little bit more foresight, and instead they were trying to chase the dragon of this aging roster.
Well, Bo, COVID. Really a bare judgment.
I'll sell that.
Yeah. Okay. I like a Chandon Sullivan, and
I'm actually conflating that. Chandon Sullivan came into the league in 2018.
Okay.
So that's
okay.
Just for accuracy's sake. That's not accurate.
But Howie Roseman did say at the Combine that they should have had more options at slot last year. And it was something we talked about going into camp, and they moved Zach McPherson over, and they practiced James Bradbury in the slot, but they really didn't have the proven depth behind Avonte Maddox. And Avonte Maddox had an injury history going in, and you said this is a spot where they can't afford to lose someone. They lose Avonte Maddox early on, and it really affected the secondary last year. They end up signing Bradley Roby. I get that, and trying to mixing and match different things, moving Eli Ricks inside, but that's not what I expect them to do this year. I think even if they don't have some of these guys make the team, I think they have more camp bodies or more options at the slot this year. So then I'll go to my slot option for you here, and this is when I spoke earlier about this kind of goes against my type, and I think I'm becoming a little bit of a caricature of myself when I always say first round pick or athletic profile, pedigree. But yeah, I do think that you can't coach tools, right? You can't coach body and speed.
That doesn't say a lot for all the quarterbacks coaches of Kirk Cousins.
You can't coach body and speed, right? You can coach. You can coach someone up on technique. You can coach someone up on awareness. You can't make someone taller. I know that. You can't make someone faster. I know that.
You can make people faster, I think. There are techniques.
Marginally so, but
okay.
Not. Okay.
Well, everything's on the margin.
Sure. So anyways, this is someone who, when you look at the athletic profile, you say, nah. You look at the size, you say, nah. But then you watch him play, and I've watched him play over the past 4 years. I watched him play against the Eagles. And you say, all right, I can see something there. He's scrappy. He knows what to do. And that's Miles Bryant. Miles Bryant, slot corner from the Patriots. And I didn't want to put him on this list. I was debating between Adoree Jackson and Trey Herndon. Adoree Jackson, who the Eagles showed interest a few years ago, and Trey Herndon, who's been career guy with the Jags. And both those guys have inside-outside versatility. But I'm not looking at inside-outside versatility here. I'm looking at like who can play, who's like a slot cornerback on the market. And honestly, I'd rather sign Avonte Maddox back than Miles Bryant.
Let's get into that in a second.
But Miles Bryant, who is 26 years old right now, 1,300 plus snaps in his career in the slot. He's just been a solid player. Made the Patriots. Well, he initially got waived. The Patriots brought him back, and he's just been a steady player for the Patriots. And what jumps out to me is over these past 3-4 years, the Patriots have kept bringing in corners, right? And Miles Bryant's kept playing, kept making the field. And what that speaks to me, because look, when a team's constantly trying to draft over you or sign over you, and you keep playing, it's because you're showing characteristics on the field and in practice that your coaches value, that Bill Belichick values, that staff values, your boy Steve Belichick, that he values. So the reason I went with Miles Bryant here is if the Eagles want to find like a true slot corner on the market, they say they have Keely Ringo, they have Eli Ricks, they have James Bradbury under contract right now. Obviously, it's Darius Slay, and then maybe they draft a corner early on. You want someone who can play the slot, that's Miles Bryant.
Let me ask you this about Miles Bryant. 26 years old. Patriots are bringing back all these guys from their roster. How much of a concern that they are not bringing him back or have not yet?
I hear what you're saying, and it's a concern. But like I said, they've drafted, or they've had like two Joneses, Marcus Jones and Jonathan Jones, and they brought back J.C. Jackson, and they keep signing guys and drafting guys and bringing guys in. And Miles Bryant is the type of player who, just in terms of profile, you want to replace, right? Like, there's nothing exceptional about him in terms of like what he's bringing, but then he keeps making the team, or he keeps making the team and keeps playing. So it doesn't surprise me that they're trying to sign over him, but it also stands out to me that they've done this and he keeps playing.
I think that's an interesting one. Now let's talk about Avonte Maddox for a second. Do you think that the Eagles should bring Avonte Maddox back? Do you think they will bring him back? Where do you think this stands right now?
Yeah, I think they should, but I wouldn't bring him back with the expectation that he's the Avonte Maddox that you've relied upon. Because
I think that part of the complication is if he comes back, there's an expectation probably from his side that he inherits this role.
Sure.
The Eagles cannot count on him being in that role. And does that complicate like the development at what you would otherwise want at nickel? Like, do you want to just give Avonte Maddox all the first-team nickel reps in the summer when you can't really expect him to stay healthy? Like, I don't know. It's a bit of a complicated thing. I'm like with anything, there's a price where it makes sense.
Yeah, what would you do?
I mean, I would be factoring that into the price. I think I would probably be interested in bringing him back, but I think those are things that you have to address, like with him and with the coaching staff.
Yeah, those are all valid points. I'm with you there. I think kind of the ideal scenario is to bring Avonte Maddox back at an affordable price. Like, he's had a chance to see the market. He visited the Saints. He didn't sign. And then you draft someone who can either take his playing time or gives you, makes you feel more comfortable in your depth at that position. I'd be confident in Avonte Maddox when he's on the field. I wouldn't be confident in Avonte Maddox staying on the field.
Yeah.
And so if you give the first team snaps to Avonte Maddox, I'm totally fine with that. But you need to have your third-round pick. Well, they don't have a third-round pick, okay? But you're a fourth-round pick or a second-round pick who can step in and play the slot if and when Avonte Maddox goes down.
All right, I'm going to give you my last one, and this is the obvious one. This is not some gem that I have found, and I've been there are a few spots where I wanted to pick a guy. Mm-hmm. I think they could use a good veteran defensive tackle at a cheap cost, but that's not where I went here. This is not, they've signed C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and this is not a position of like super need at the moment. C.J. Gardner-Johnson made it very clear, as you said at his press conference, that he wants to be a safety.
Yep.
And so if you're signing a safety, that becomes a complicated thing. Where do you play? Like, does Reed Blankenship get on the field? Do you move C.J. Gardner-Johnson? And that's why, like, a guy like Julian Blackmon, who I know people are calling for in the chat, I feel like that would create an awkward dynamic, because this is a guy who wants to, this is the middle of his career, right? He's going to be jockeying for those snaps, and in theory, if he's healthy, he wants to be the long-term starter there. I think if the market has not given Justin Simmons his cost like that he wants just yet, if there is a 1-year deal, or even if it's a 2-year deal that is, front-loaded, and the expectation is he is here to be an impact player this year, help bring Vic Fangio's scheme along and communicate it to everybody, and there are ways that you can get him and C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Reed Blankenship on the field at the same time. By all accounts, this is not a guy who's going to come in and make waves. I think that with enough room as they have under the cap right now, that is the splash that I think I would still be interested in making.
I would not oppose that, and I think the Eagles have stuck to the profile enough of like core, C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Bryce Huff are guys in their mid-20s who you're expecting to kind of be core players for you for the next 2-3 years. I'm okay if you say we're a Super Bowl contender. Let's get someone for this year and just make sure we're good at safety this year. And
if we're not going to get like our linebackers to be really good, and if our second outside corner is a bit of a concern, and if Darius Slay's health is a bit of a concern, how do we cover for all of that stuff? Well, maybe if you have like the league's best tandem of safeties, that helps, right?
Yeah, and he has a history with Vic Fangio, like you said. I keep hearing this charge that like this is like the dream team thing. Well, there were and you know this better than me.
Unfair.
But you know this better than me because I was covering the Giants at the time. You were covering the Eagles. But part of the issue with the dream team thing was everything was kind of done hastily. Right, the lockout just came out. There was no offseason program. You had a new scheme in place. Like there was no. It was just kind of they got Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, they got Nnamdi, they had Asante, and it's just like, all right, you guys figure it out, right? And everything was happening all at once. And then Vince Young said that. But I think like Justin Simmons, you're not signing Justin Simmons because of his name. This is someone who has experience with your defensive coordinator. If you sign him, what you're getting is like the confidence that all right, he knows the scheme. He can fit this role for this year while you figure out what Sidney Brown is, while you figure out how CJ fits best, while you figure out if Reed Blankenship is an every down starter in the league under Vic Fangio. So I wouldn't oppose that. I didn't like that if that was the move over CJ, but if that's the move with CJ, I'm okay with that.
Okay. What's your last one?
Yeah, so my last one here is...
And then there are other guys there at safety. Like that is the like one of the few positions where there are guys still available. Like I wanted to find a tight end, and there is nobody left at tight end.
Yeah,
like
that's
Mitchell
my trade.
Wilcox
That's my
like,
trade candidates at tight end. Yeah.
But like Eddie Jackson's still there, Julian Blackmon, who we talked about. There's a few other guys who could fit that role potentially, but I feel like if you're going to do that, you might as well do it for the guy who's really good.
Agreed. So you mentioned they can use more depth along the defensive line. T.R. Tart, and we talked about T.R. Tart during Quackatology. He's been a real productive player. Like the Titans gave him a second round tender at this time last year, which really says something. If you're giving a second round tender, you're basically telling the player we're paying you $4 million, right? And then he was waived or released for his attitude. But he's been an important player for that team. I remember when the Eagles played the Titans, 2 years ago now or so, they were talking about Tart as like man, this guy's tough in the middle. He's a legit nose tackle. So he gives you that depth with Jordan Davis. I'm going to read Greg Rosenthal, our friend at NFL.com, 3 Gs. He was number 8 on Greg Rosenthal's list, and he said, based just off tape, Tart is a monster who could be a steal in free agency. His midseason release from Tennessee won't help his market value, though. And that's the situation here. Like, you get concerned when a guy's waived reportedly because of attitude. Now, there were mitigating factors there. We talked about this with Devin White. When a guy wants a new contract and he doesn't get a new contract, sometimes he can respond in a poor way, doesn't feel appreciated. I'm not making excuses for him. That might have been a situation there. He's a Philly native. That works two ways. Sometimes that's attractive in signing a contract. Sometimes you say, you don't want him to get too close to where he grew up. So that's something you consider, but it could make the Eagles appealing. And I just think that I am like your defensive line needs to be really good against the run this year. The Eagles are still figuring out linebackers. This is not Devin White's strength. Apparently, is his tackling ability. His run tackling ability. Right, he's more of a pass coverage chase guy, if you will, or big play guy. You want to know that you have that juice in the middle. Jordan Davis is going to start, but if Tart can be a strong rotational guy, chance to reset his value, that would interest me.
All right. Before we get to our trade targets, let me tell you about Game Time, because if you want to go and spoil your kid just like Zach did with Reed last night at the Sixers game, all you got to do is wait and wait and wait and wait as Game Time approaches, and then go to your Game Time app, because that is where you can find the best deals on last-minute tickets. Because it shouldn't be stressful buying tickets to your favorite events, but Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you're going to have. It is the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason, because you get images of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You can buy tickets in a matter of seconds, just 2 taps and you're set, and then the tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Zach's digging through his email, I'm digging through my email, and nobody wants to be doing that. Game Time makes it easy, and tickets make great holiday gifts. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Celebrate one of the best holidays of the year with us, PHLY, at Philly's opening day. That's the holiday I'm referring to. You can join our very own Jamie Lynch and Renee Washington and John Foley for a pregame live show and watch party at Betts Parks Casino and Sportsbook. Our friends at Miller Lite will have 16-ounce can specials from 11:30 a.m. to closing. PHLY is going to be raffling off PHLY swag, game day swag, and more. Also, Sixers. I was at that game last night. They're on a roll here. Courtesy of our friends at Coors Light, we are hosting our first of many Sixers watch parties. Join us at Deke's Barbecue on West Berkeley Street when the Sixers take on the Cavs at 7:30. Show up and enter a raffle to win 2 tickets, section 116, row 13, to the April 9 Sixers versus Detroit game. Deke's will be offering $3 20-ounce drafts all night long. Check out all of our upcoming events at allphly.com under the events calendar to RSVP. And I'll just also give a quick shout out to become a diehard member on allphly.com. You get discount on merch, discount on events, and you get to read premium content such as Bo's Top 100 Eagles free agent rankings. That is a place to keep going back to. I was longtime listeners know that I can be obsessed with metrics, and I keep going back and seeing our numbers. And I was very encouraged to see how many of you were reading our draft grades last week. And if you are a diehard member, you get access to those stories. So check that out on allphly.com.
Some more developments on the Rice Krispies front since yesterday's show.
Oh, yeah. Why don't you share?
Well, I got a couple notes. One from our friend at Bistro La Minette, who has they have sort of a Rice Krispies treat on their menu. Look delicious, and it's their most popular one. And then we got a note from Robin, who says there is a wide variance in Rice Krispies treats. Nobody's can compare to her mom's.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear. I like Rice Krispie treats. I'm just...
So you love Oregon Burks?
No. All right, let me clarify this. when I'm referring to Rice Krispie treats, I'm thinking of like
I feel bad because there's no way that when you gave this like 90 seconds of thought to write an answer that you thought this was going to become a long-running bit of you hating Rice Krispie treats.
No, that's how most things have happened on the show, Franco. Is that like I make one throwaway line and then 4 years later I'm still defending it. That
sounds about right.
I'm thinking of like a bake sale. Okay, Rice Krispie treats are.
If there's like a bake sale in high school or something like that, the number one thing I'm going for is the Rice Krispie treat.
Oh, really? No,
absolutely.
I'm going. You see, so I'm going for like the cupcake at the bake sale. I feel like there's just more. There's I just feel like Rice Krispie treats you can make on your own. It's not as
cupcakes are pretty easy.
I know cupcakes are easy too. I get it. I just think Rice Krispie treats are like an easy, just general thing. It's not a top. I didn't realize it was on the menu.
Here's my
Credit
take.
to that.
My take on Rice Krispie treats actually is I would say maybe the widest variance between like a store brand, like the actual Kellogg's Rice Krispies treat that you can buy, pales in comparison to any homemade Rice Krispies treat. I think it tastes way more processed. It's got like a weird aftertaste.
I agree with you.
Miss me with that.
Yeah.
Give me any homemade Rice Krispies treat.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my point about Rice Krispie treats
So that's your point, is that Oren Burks you do not want to buy him from the store. You need to make Oren Burks.
My point is that you're not paying now. A shout out to our friend at PHLY Net. Is that right? That I've never seen it on a dessert menu. I got to check that out. It looked like a great dessert menu. But I typically think of it as like something you just make at home with your kids.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm still struggling to find the Oren Burks connection, but that's okay.
I was going with something that's reliable, but not like your top option.
Okay. All right.
Again, it was 30 seconds on a Saturday night. It was not meant to be 2 shows. We spent more times on Rice Krispie treats than we spent on like real tangible Eagles topics.
I mean, arguably more time on Rice Krispie treats than on Oren Burks at this point.
All right, that's a good way of putting it.
Okay.
Yes. Who I look forward to speaking with today, Oren Burks.
Let's talk about our trade topics. And for me, this is a pie in the sky. You don't know unless you ask type target. Who I would imagine his team is not interested in trading, and they would like to lock up long term. But this is a team that has a new head coach. Maybe they have some different philosophies. And it's one of the teams that has been rumored to be interested in Hassan Reddick that needs to upgrade their pass rush. And so if you're not getting a second-round pick for Hassan Reddick, maybe we can send you some kind of pick, and we'll give you Hassan Reddick, and you trade us A.J. Terrell, the young corner from Clemson, who has been sort of like the hipsters guy at corner for a couple years. He had a little bit of a down year. He was second-team All-Pro 2 years ago, or 3 years ago in 2021. Has not sort of hit the full zeitgeist.
Sure.
Like this is one of the guys. But if you're looking for the Eagles to have a long-term guy on the outside, I think he could be an answer there. And there's a bit of a full circle. Remember, we were like, well, the Eagles should trade up for CeeDee Lamb when he's falling in that draft, when they ended up drafting Jalen Reagor instead. And, Howie was like, listen, man, we made some calls. Atlanta did not want to move.
Yep.
And they did not want to move because they wanted to take A.J. Terrell. Obviously, that was a different regime, so maybe that's part of it too. I feel like if you can pry him loose as part of a Hassan Reddick deal, then maybe we got something cooking.
I like that. And I like the idea of trading Hassan in a player-for-player deal at this point too. If you can't get the draft picks that you want, you trade for someone else's either version of Hassan Reddick or a young player in a scheme change they're going to have to pay. Wasn't drafted by that administration. I think that's a smart idea. I like Terrell. That's the type of player that the Eagles should target. That's a really good trade option. That should have been like a thumbnail today. That would have been a sexy thumbnail. You know what I mean? Talking. Sexy in terms of people are, ooh, they're talking about A.J. Terrell. I want to watch this. Not, okay. In any event, I
like a boxing match.
I like that. And the other part that it would do is there's kind of this, if you follow every mock draft, it's like, oh, the Falcons are taking Dallas Turner in the first round, right? It kind of gives Dallas a little bit of optionality. It gives Atlanta a little bit of optionality with edge rusher, because how are the Falcons going to get that edge rushing juice right now? You're thinking top 10, but maybe they want to spend a top 10 pick on a different position, or they want to trade out of it. I like that.
Okay, there you go.
So my trade candidate's not nearly as high profile, a little more of a hipster pick, if you will. You mentioned tight end earlier, and you made the point, and it's a correct one, that man, this is like a really bear market at tight end.
Yeah.
So what I did is I look at, all right, who's spending on tight ends, or who's bringing in new tight ends, and what depth chart has changed. And sure enough, the Los Angeles Chargers, who are getting rid of a lot of people, but they love stockpiling tight ends. They've added Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst. Okay, and so bumping down on the depth chart, presumably if Dissly and Hurst are high, is Donald Parham Jr. Donald Parham Jr.
Wow.
Who
we should have made that the thumbnail. That would have got the people moving.
Donald Parham Jr. Who
Get him in a nice bikini. Now we're talking sexy.
He signed a 2-year, $2.7 million deal before last season but now they have a new GM and a new coach. And the administration last year liked him, and Kellen Moore used him. Kellen Moore, the best season of his career came with Kellen Moore. 27 catches, 285 yards, 4 touchdowns with Kellen Moore. That was the best season he's had. He's still young. I think he's like 27. I should have had that in my notes. But, man, you're talking about he might be 26. You're talking about someone who is like a training camp crush for Eagles fans who come to the open practice. There's some MoMA here, okay? 6'8", 237.
There's some MoMA here.
6'8", 237 pounds is Donald Parham Jr. Gives you a red zone pass catching threat, and yeah, he's shown. Look, I don't watch a lot of Chargers games, right? But every time I watch a Chargers game, I see them throwing this pass to Donald Parham Jr. in like the corner of the end zone. And I'm like, man, this is like a Madden. I see here, Gavin says Madden legend. This is like what you look for in Madden, is the 6'8", 237-pound guy who can win these jump balls. That's Donald Parham Jr. They've signed 2 tight ends over him, different administration. You might have Jim Harbaugh looking at this and saying, my tight ends need to get their hands dirty and block, right? I don't want these glorified wide receivers playing tight end. And Kellen Moore might say, hey, I threw this guy. He got 4 touchdowns for me last year. He was one of my more reliable pass catching threats.
I really hope this happens. This would be a great call.
Calling the shot, yeah.
Yeah. Now I feel like we should give everybody like a couple minutes to just sort of take some time to themselves. Now that Donald Parham has been mentioned, they might need to take care of some business because that's so sexy. We'll give you a couple minutes. Come back to us. Maybe pause if you want. From a player for player.
Yeah.
Trade perspective, Zach. The problem here is if you're trying to trade Hassan Reddick for Donald Parham straight up, like they've already brought back Bosa and Khalil Mack. They don't have a need for Reddick.
No, I'm not trading Hassan Reddick for him, but I'm giving one of my 6th rounders for Donald Parham Jr.
You're gonna have a 6th rounder for Donald Parham,
or maybe no, I'm doing a 6th, 7th swap. They'd love those 6th, 7th swaps. They did that with Albert O.
The other thing here is, if you're chasing, what was successful about getting to the Super Bowl 2007. You had the Hams, famously.
Okay. Yes.
Brandon Graham, Corey Graham. I forget the others. But now, if you're bringing in Donald Parham, you add him to Brandon Graham. Maybe you bring back Zach Cunningham, and Nigel Bradham, of course. There was one more. So if you're chasing the Hams, maybe this helps you move the needle there.
Yeah. So Donald Parham Jr. The Eagles make this trade for him, and the PR staff, the great PR staff that the Eagles have, they're prepping him for the tough Philly media, and they're like, these guys are going to be all over you. They're going to try to bait you with questions, okay? And then you got this guy, Bo Wulf, in his mustard shirt saying, you're a ham. How does that? Yeah.
Justin Hamilton.
There you go. Yeah. How do you feel about bringing the ham back to Philly? And he would look at you and he'd say, the reporters at Stetson never asked me about this. So, I probably want to give up a 6th rounder for him. But 26 years old, turns 27 in August. 6'8", 237 is what he's listed as. Went undrafted in 2019. Bounced around between Detroit, Washington, before catching on with the Chargers. He was a midseason All-XFL player in 2020.
Wow, how about that? Where's he from?
He's from Florida, Lakeland, Florida.
Okay, so he shows up and it's... hey, what's it like to be a ham? And then next to him is, what's your favorite food at Bubby's at Lakeland, Florida.
He's saying, why do the Philly reporters talk like 80-year-old creepy men? Yes, that's what he's wondering. Yeah.
I really thought your thumbnail was sexy.
They would then file a restraining order against the reporters here in Philly. Yep.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast. Good stuff. Congratulations to the Parham family for getting that Q rating up on today's episode. We appreciate that. We'll be back tomorrow at noon. We may do like a Saquon Barkley themed episode. We're efforting there. We may save that for later in the offseason. We're going to figure it out. But rest assured, we've got plenty to talk about. We've got the Duck Juice draft coming up later this week, where Zach and I are going to draft the positions we think the Eagles are going to draft in the draft. That's a lot of the word draft in one sentence, but I think the longtime sickos know what we're talking about. So fun stuff. And then next week, we're at the owners' meetings down in Orlando. So for Zach and Andrew, for keeping us looking good in this mustard shirt and keeping everything rolling, thanks to everybody for watching and listening. We will talk to you tomorrow at noon. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the